Welcome to the channel. Today, we will delve into the fascinating life of one of the most famous and passionate artists in history, Frida Kahlo. From her unforgettable art to her incredible story of resilience, love, and pain, join me as we explore the journey behind the legend. Let's get started. This is going to sound absolutely insane, and honestly, I wouldn't believe it myself if I hadn't lived through it. I don't usually post stuff like this, but I need to get this out of my system. Maybe someone out there can relate or at least help me feel a little less crazy. I, 38M, was married to Frida for 8 years. Yes, Frida Kahlo, the painter. Or at least that's who she became. When we met, she wasn't famous. She wasn't wearing traditional Tewana dresses or talking about Diego Rivera or communism or painting those goddamn self-portraits. She was just a strange, magnetic woman with intense eyes and a sharp tongue, and somehow she saw something in me. We met in Mexico City. I was working on architectural restorations back then, still trying to figure out who I was. She was younger, bold, kind of reckless. She had this limp from a trolley accident, and she'd joke about it like it didn't hurt her at all. Said it made her more interesting. I thought it was brave. I thought she was brave. In the beginning, it was passionate, wild, the kind of love that burns a hole through your life. I should have known something that hot couldn't last without scorching everything around it. The first sign of trouble? I caught her sketching a man in bed. Not me. Some guy I didn't recognize. When I asked her about it, she laughed and said, "Don't be so provincial. It's art." That was her answer to everything. It's art. But something about that moment stayed with me. The drawing wasn't abstract. It wasn't symbolic. It was intimate. Like she had memorized the curve of this guy's spine. Like she'd been there. I didn't say anything else that night. I just poured myself a drink and stared at the walls of our apartment, all covered in her paintings, portraits of herself, sad eyes, bleeding hearts, monkeys and birds and skeletons. It used to feel like I lived in a museum. Now it felt like I was in someone else's hallucination. That was the first crack. But I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was lucky to be with someone like her. God, I was such an idiot. So yeah, I let it go. The sketch. The weird vibe. Her brushing me off. I told myself, "You're being insecure. Don't ruin this." That's the thing about women like Frida, fiery, intense types. They know how to make you doubt yourself while looking you dead in the eye. But things got weirder after that. She started going out more. Said she was visiting family or painting at her father's house, but I knew something was off. You know that gut feeling you get? That internal alarm? Mine was screaming, but I kept hitting snooze. One night, she came home late. Reeked of turpentine and cigar smoke. Her dress had smudges on it like someone had wiped their hands on her hips, literally. I asked where she'd been, and she said, "With Diego." "You know, Rivera." Said it like I should have been impressed. Yeah, that Diego Rivera. The muralist. I'd heard of him. Big, political, kind of a genius, but married and ugly as hell. I said, "You mean you were alone with him?" She rolled her eyes. "He's my mentor." Don't be jealous. Jealous. That word. She used it like a weapon. I was jealous every time I had a question. I was controlling every time I wanted clarity. Meanwhile, she was disappearing for hours, coming home like a walking contradiction, exhausted, energized, smug, mysterious. I let it simmer. But then I started hearing rumors. People whispered things, other artists, gallery folks. One of them slipped up and called Diego her lover right in front of me. Laughed it off like it was old news. When I confronted her, she laughed in my face. Said, "Even if I was, would you really be surprised? You don't get to own me." That hit like a punch to the stomach. I was speechless. No denial. No apology. Just pure defiance. Like she wanted me to know, or like hurting me was part of her expression. That night, I slept on the floor of the studio. Her easel watched me like a damn witness. But the worst part? I still loved her. I still wanted to believe there was a version of her that was mine. If you've ever been cheated on publicly, like humiliated in 3D, then you know what I'm talking about. So after that awful night when Frida basically non-denied her thing with Diego, I tried to make peace with it. Or at least pretend I could. Stupid, I know. But you don't just leave someone like Frida without first trying to twist yourself into every possible shape to make it work. But then came the party. It was one of those bohemian art gatherings in Coyoacán. Wine, music, half the guests barefoot for no reason, and everyone pretending they understood surrealism. Frida insisted we go together. Said it was important for her image that we show unity. That phrase should have been a red flag. We get there, And I swear, it's like walking into a theater production I didn't get a script for. People were giving me looks. You know the kind. Pity mixed with mild amusement. Someone clapped me on the back and said, "You're a better man than I am." I had no clue what the hell that meant until I saw Diego. He was standing in the courtyard, this oversized blob of a man, laughing with Frida. She was draped across him like a scarf. He had his hand on her waist, my wife, and she didn't even flinch. Just looked over at me and raised her glass. Like I was the outsider. I felt sick. Like my whole body suddenly realized it didn't belong to me anymore. I wanted to confront her right then, but the crowd was too thick, the music too loud, and I was too numb. Later that night, I pulled her aside and finally said it. "Are you sleeping with him?" She took a long drag of her cigarette, exhaled slowly, and said, "Does it really matter? He inspires me." That sentence broke something in me. Not just because of what it meant, but because of how calm she was about it. Like I was being unreasonable for caring that my wife was screwing a married man in front of half of Mexico. I left the party alone, walked for miles, thinking about the girl I fell in love with and wondering when she became this cold, selfish stranger. But the thing is, that was just the beginning. What happened next made the affair look like a footnote. After that party, I didn't go home for a few days. Crashed with a friend on the other side of the city. I needed space to think, to breathe, to stop replaying her damn face looking smug over Diego's shoulder like I was the one out of line. But then curiosity got the better of me. I started thinking about the sketch from weeks before, the man in the bed. Not Diego. Someone else. The lines in that drawing had been too familiar, too studied. I couldn't shake it. So I went back home one afternoon while she was out. I hadn't planned to snoop. I really hadn't. But when you feel like your life's been rewritten without your permission, you start flipping pages to figure out where the plot changed. There was this drawer in her old desk she always kept locked. The key was taped to the back of a painting. I'd seen her hide it there once, years ago. I took it down, found the key, and opened the drawer. There were letters. Dozens of them. Folded neatly, tied together with twine. And they weren't from Diego. They were from a woman. I read one. Then another. They were graphic, romantic, poetic. Stuff like, "Your body is a revolution I want to fight for," and "When you kissed me, the world felt more honest." And they were all signed Christina. Christina is her sister. Her damn sister. I sat there, just frozen. I knew they were close, but this was betrayal layered on betrayal. She was cheating on me with Diego and her own sister. I mean, who the hell does that? Frida came home an hour later. I was still sitting there, the letters spread across the desk like a crime scene. She walked in, saw them, and, no joke, said, "You went through my things?" Like I was the problem. I asked her if it was true. She just shrugged and said, "I never said I was traditional." No guilt. No emotion. Like hurting people was part of her brand. I asked her why all the lies, the secrets, the cruelty. She looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Pain is my truth. You wanted peace. That's not the same thing." That was the moment I realized I didn't know who I had married. I knew her image, her drama, her paintings. But not her. Not the real her, if that even existed. But trust me, it gets worse. After the letter incident, I left. Or I tried to. I packed a bag, slammed the door, told myself I was done. But less than 2 days later, I got a phone call from her mother, sobbing frantic. "Frida's in the hospital. You need to come now." Turns out, she had collapsed. Some infection from a surgery she never even told me she was planning. Something to do with complications from her old trolley accident, the one that shattered her spine and pelvis years ago. I won't lie. I hesitated. I sat in the damn hallway outside my apartment with the phone still in my hand for like 20 minutes before deciding whether to go. But I went. And that's when the gaslighting kicked into overdrive. I walk into her hospital room. She's pale, hooked up to tubes, looking like a ghost of herself. She sees me and immediately starts crying. But not about what happened. Oh no. She cries and tells everyone, nurses, doctors, her parents, that I abandoned her. That I walked out when she needed me most. She conveniently left out the whole part where she was screwing Diego Rivera and her own sister behind my back. The kicker? Her family believed her. They looked at me like I was some cold-hearted bastard who left a disabled woman to die alone. Her father cornered me outside her room and said, "You should be ashamed. A real man stays, no matter how hard things get." I had no words. Nothing I could say would make sense to people who already picked their martyr. Meanwhile, Frida basked in the sympathy. She'd shoot me these little glances like, look what I can do with a single tear. It was theatrical. The pain was real, sure, but the manipulation? That was award-winning. And get this, while she was still in the hospital bed, recovering from surgery, Diego came to visit. He brought flowers. She kissed him on the cheek in front of her mother. Her mother smiled. That's when it hit me. I was the only one who didn't know I'd been cast as the villain. Everyone else had been given the script months ago. I left the hospital that night and didn't go back. I didn't even say goodbye. I just walked out into the street and let the traffic drown out the sound of my heart trying to reason with my brain. But the real insanity was still coming. You'd think after a hospital drama and a public affair with both a famous muralist and her sister, that'd be enough humiliation for one man. But no, Frida had another act in store. A few weeks after she got out of the hospital, I started getting these calls from mutual friends. Things like, hey, man, glad to hear you and Frida are working things out. Or saw the article in La Prensa touching stuff. Wait, what article? So I went out and got the paper. Right there, on page 2, a full interview with Frida, titled Love, Art, and Suffering, The Unbreakable Marriage of Frida Kahlo. She talked about me like I was some kind of war hero, described me as her rock, the only man who never abandoned her during her darkest hours, and this part really punched me in the throat, the love of her life. She even included a little black and white photo of us at our wedding, smiling like idiots. No mention of Diego. No mention of Christina. No mention of the letters I found, the hospital manipulation, the gaslighting. Just me, wearing the skin of a supportive husband like it was mine to keep. I lost it. I called her. I asked her what the hell this was about. You know what she said? It's for the narrative. I asked, what narrative? She said, and I quote, the one that makes us both look like legends. I laughed. Or maybe choked. I don't even know anymore. You want to rewrite our marriage like it was a beautiful tragedy? And she said, people don't care about the truth. They care about stories. At that point, it wasn't even about the betrayal anymore. It was about how easily she rewrote history, how quickly she turned our actual pain into performance. She painted her wounds on canvas and expected everyone to clap while I bled off stage, uncredited. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a prop. And the public? They ate it up. No one questioned it. The same people who saw her grinding on Diego at that party were now congratulating me for being such a committed husband. I became a ghost in my own life, a stand-in for the man she wished I had been. So I did the only thing left that made sense to me. I disappeared. After that article, something in me just shut off. It wasn't rage anymore, it was silence. That dangerous, numb kind of silence where you stop checking your phone because you already know the text are lies. You stop talking to people because you know they've already chosen her version of you. So I ghosted. No dramatic goodbye, no final confrontation. Just packed a duffel bag, deleted social media, and left Mexico City. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even know myself. I ended up in Merida for a while, doing carpentry for a guy who paid cash and didn't ask questions. It felt good to make things that weren't soaked in emotion. Wood doesn't gaslight you. It just breaks when it's weak. But Frida? She wasn't done with me. Even after I was gone, she kept using my name like a paintbrush. I heard from an old college buddy that she had a new exhibit opening in Guadalajara. Apparently, half the paintings were tributes to me. Titles like My Husband's Shadow, The Broken Groom, and my personal favorite, The One Who Left Me Without Saying Goodbye. You see the irony, right? She painted herself as the abandoned, grieving, misunderstood wife. The same woman who lied, cheated, weaponized her illness, and turned my reputation into art house fuel, was now selling my vanishing act as some grand emotional abandonment. And the press loved it. One critic called it the visual diary of a heart shredded by love. Someone else wrote that my absence was the ghost that haunts her most. They made her pain beautiful, and they made my exit villainous. It's surreal, watching your life become someone else's masterpiece. But I guess that's what she always wanted. To suffer gloriously, to hurt like it meant something, to be the woman who bled on canvas and made you say, wow, she's brilliant. And in the middle of that, I was just a man trying to be a husband, a role I played too honestly in a script that was never meant to be truthful. But here's where it gets really twisted. Diego reached out to me, said he needed to talk, man to man. If you'd told me a year earlier that I'd be sitting across from Diego Rivera, famous muralist, professional ego, the man who helped destroy my marriage, sharing a bottle of mezcal and talking, I would have laughed in your face. But here we were, a quiet little cantina in Coyoacán. I was back in the city for a job, and he'd somehow heard. Sent word through a mutual friend. Diego wants to talk. Says it's important. I didn't know him a damn thing. But I was curious. And if I'm honest, I wanted to look the guy in the eye at least once. He showed up wearing a cream-colored jacket, looking bloated and self-important as ever. But he surprised me. The first thing he did? He apologized. Not a dramatic, weepy apology. Just looked at me and said, "I wronged you, man. I knew what I was doing with Frida. I didn't care. I just wanted her. And I didn't think you'd leave." That last part messed me up. He admitted it. He never thought I'd actually walk away. Because in their twisted little universe, betrayal was just art. Pain was a currency they traded in. I was just another bleeding muse for their inspiration board. I asked him, "So what now? You still with her?" He took a long drink, then shook his head. "No, not really. I mean, she's with everyone and no one. Frida doesn't belong to people. She consumes them." I swear, I sat there in stunned silence. Because that right there, that was it. The most honest description of her I'd ever heard. He told me they had already imploded. Fought constantly, cheated on each other with more people than I could count. He said she painted him as a monster, just like she painted me. She needs villains, he said. And when she runs out of them, she turns to herself. For a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then he pulled out a little sketch she did of me. It was weirdly accurate. Dark circles under the eyes, mouth a tight line, shoulders slumped like I'd just aged a decade. "She gave me this after you left," he said. "Told me she finally understood what you were trying to be. Said you were the only one who didn't use her." I didn't take the drawing. I left it on the table. Because screw that. You don't get to immortalize me in regret after gutting me for color. I walked out of that bar feeling hollow, but lighter. Because now I knew. It wasn't about me. Not really. I was just the quiet space in her chaos. And she didn't know how to love that. I hadn't heard from Christina in years. After the whole mess, the affair, the lies, the manipulation, I had cut her off completely. No calls, no awkward family meetups, nothing. But then, about 2 years after I'd vanished from Frida's orbit, I got this letter. It was short, neat cursive, cream-colored envelope like it was from a wedding invite or some classy event I'd never attend again. "I owe you the truth. And I know I don't deserve to be heard, but I hope you'll read this anyway." I almost tossed it. But curiosity is a hell of a drug. She admitted everything. Yes, she slept with Diego. More than once. Said Frida knew from the beginning. In fact, Frida encouraged it. Said it was a test of loyalty, some bizarre experiment in pain and devotion she wanted to observe, like we were subjects in some emotional science fair. Apparently, Frida liked knowing she could break people and still have them crawl back. Christina wrote that she was naive, flattered by Diego's attention, but mostly scared of her sister. "You don't say no to Frida," she wrote. "You just find ways to survive her." She said the guilt nearly ate her alive after I left. That's why she'd gone silent. She wasn't avoiding me, she was ashamed. Said she thought about confessing 100 times, but figured I'd never believe her. Honestly, I'm not sure I would have back then. The last line of the letter hit the hardest. She painted you as the villain because she couldn't stand the idea that you were the only person who ever really loved her. I sat on my porch in Merida for a long time after reading that, watching the sun die over the horizon, feeling like I'd finally gotten the last puzzle piece, but it didn't change the picture. Just confirmed how messed up it really was. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry. I just didn't have anything left to say. Some apologies don't fix things. They just mark where the wreckage ends. And as for Frida, she never reached out again. But a few months later, I found out she'd painted another portrait. It was called The Silence Between Us. People said it was one of her most emotional works. I didn't go see it. It happened in the most ordinary way, because fate likes to dress tragedy in the mundane. I was in Mexico City for work. Just a quick install for a design firm. Nothing dramatic. I hadn't thought about Frida in months, maybe a year. She was a ghost I had finally buried. I ducked into a bookstore cafe to kill time before my train. And there she was, sitting in the back, surrounded by half-filled notebooks, 3 espresso cups, and a scarf that looked like it hadn't been washed since 1932. Her hair was longer. Her eyes were tired, but still unmistakably her. Frida Kahlo. My ex-wife. My destroyer. My muse, I guess, if I were into poetry. She looked up and paused. No dramatic gasp. No tears. Just a faint, knowing smile. "So, you didn't die," she said. I laughed. I don't know why. Maybe because it felt like something only she would say. We talked. Small talk at first. Weather, art, whatever. Then silence. Then, "Did you hate me?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. Because the honest answer was complicated. I hated what she did to me. I hated how she painted me in her stories. I hated that she used love like a performance. But her? I don't know. Maybe I never really hated her at all. I said, "I don't think you ever knew how to be loved without destroying it." She nodded. No defense. Just quiet. Then she told me she was sick again. Said it casually, like someone commenting on traffic. "It's not the kind you survive," she said. But I've made peace with that. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't there for drama. I didn't need closure. But something in me broke a little, anyway. She pulled out a little folded page. A sketch of me, again. This time, I was older. Wiser. Sad, but not defeated. "This one I never showed anyone," she said. "It was just for me. The version of you that stayed in my head." I took it. For once, I didn't argue. She didn't ask me to come visit her. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Just offered the tiniest glimpse of a heart that, maybe, had started to regret things a little too late. And then I left. That was the last time I saw her. When the news came that Frida was gone, everything inside me twisted. Her death wasn't a shock. After all, I'd known about her illness. But somehow, hearing it on the radio felt like a final punch to the gut. The woman who tore my life apart was finally gone. The invitation to her funeral arrived 2 days later. A glossy card, dripping with sentiment and photos of her smiling like a saint. I didn't go. People asked why. Friends, family, even strangers on social media. "Why wouldn't you pay your respects?" they said. Because I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be mourning. Was it the woman I loved? The woman who lied, cheated, and twisted our story into a legend? Or the brilliant artist who poured her pain onto canvas and made the world see? I felt like attending would be stepping into a performance once again, another scene where I played the grieving husband to her tragic heroine. Instead, I stayed home, burning the last sketch she gave me, the one from that final meeting. Not out of anger, but to close the chapter on a story that was never truly mine. I poured myself a drink and watched the smoke curl up and disappear. What I mourned most was the man I could have been, if love hadn't been so damn complicated. After all the lies, the pain, and the chaos, it took me a long time to understand what really happened. And even longer to forgive myself for sticking around as long as I did. Here's the truth. Loving someone like Frida, it's a trap disguised as passion. It feels intense, alive, like you're part of something bigger than yourself. But beneath that, there's a darkness that consumes you if you're not careful. She was a master at turning her pain into art, but also turning her lies into weapons. And I was naive enough to believe love could fix it all. So, here's what I learned, and what I'd tell anyone stuck in a relationship with a partner who's manipulative, charming, and full of contradictions. Love doesn't have to hurt this much. If you're always exhausted, doubting yourself, or walking on eggshells, that's not love. That's survival. Watch the patterns, not the apologies. People can say sorry 1,000 times, but if the behavior doesn't change, the words are meaningless. Your feelings matter. Don't let someone rewrite your story to make themselves the victim while you're left questioning your sanity. It's okay to walk away. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave behind what you thought love should be and start over on your own terms. Healing is messy, but possible. Therapy, distance, honest conversations with yourself, they're all tools to reclaim your peace. I'm not saying I'm fully healed. Some days the memories sting like fresh wounds. But I'm finally free from the weight of pretending that a toxic love was worth the cost. And that, honestly, feels like the biggest victory of all. After the dust settled, the real work began. I was broken, no sugarcoating that, but somehow also strangely relieved. Like I'd been trapped in a storm for years and finally found a calm harbor. I didn't know where to start. My identity had been wrapped up in that chaotic love story for so long, I barely remembered who I was without it. So, I did what any broken guy would do. I took it day by day. First, I moved out of Mexico City. Needed a fresh start away from all the places that reminded me of Frida, Diego, and every messy betrayal. I found a small apartment in a quieter town. Nothing fancy, but mine. I started journaling, writing out all the anger, confusion, and sadness. At first, the pages were ugly, raw, but it was the first honest thing I'd done in years. Therapy was a game changer. For the longest time, I thought I just needed to man up and move on. But talking to someone who actually listened, no judgment, no side-taking, helped me untangle the knot inside. Slowly, I rediscovered parts of myself I'd forgotten. The love for art, ironically. I even started painting again, messy, clumsy, but mine. Friends I'd pushed away came back when I let them. Support wasn't always immediate, but it was there when I needed it. Most importantly, I learned to trust myself again, to believe that my feelings were valid, that I deserved honesty and respect, not manipulation. Rebuilding wasn't quick or easy, but it was worth every painful step. Just when I thought I'd hit rock bottom, someone showed up out of nowhere to pull me back up. It wasn't a new lover, a wise mentor, or some magical stranger. It was my neighbor. Her name was Isabel. She lived across the hall, a retired art teacher with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. At first, we barely spoke, just nods and awkward hellos. One day, I was struggling with a painting in my tiny apartment, cursing every brushstroke. She knocked on my door holding a cup of coffee and a look that said, "You're doing it wrong, but that's okay." We started talking. About art, about life, about heartbreak. She told me stories about her own failed marriage, the lies, the regrets, the small victories. She didn't sugarcoat anything, but she didn't pity me either. Isabel became my anchor, the person who reminded me I wasn't defined by my past or my mistakes. She pushed me to keep painting, keep living, keep hoping. Most importantly, she taught me that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to carry your scars without letting them weigh you down. I never expected a random neighbor to become the person who helped me finally move on. But sometimes, help comes from the least likely places. Looking back, if I could sit down with that younger, hopeful version of me, the guy who thought love could conquer everything, I'd have a few hard truths to share. First, love isn't supposed to feel like drowning. If you're gasping for air, it's not love. It's survival. Don't ignore the red flags, no matter how beautiful the story sounds. Second, trust your gut. I ignored so many warning signs because I wanted to believe the best in her. But sometimes, the truth is right in front of you, and you just have to face it, even if it hurts. Third, your worth isn't defined by someone else's ability to love you. I spent years trying to fix what was broken in her, only to lose myself. You can't save someone who won't save themselves. Finally, don't be afraid to walk away. It's terrifying. It feels like failure. But it's the most courageous thing you can do for yourself. I'm not proud of everything in my story. The mistakes I made, the pain I let her cause, the nights I spent questioning my own sanity. But I am proud that I survived it. Frida Kahlo's story wasn't just about art or passion. It was about chaos, destruction, and the cost of loving someone who couldn't love right. If you're in a relationship where the lies outweigh the love, the manipulation outweighs the trust, remember, you deserve better. And sometimes, the bravest love is the love you give yourself by walking away. Thanks for reading, folks. This was one hell of a ride. Just a guy who survived Frida's storm.